I've been studying Islam for quite a few years. Islam is always portrayed as a terrorist religion.
What
Yeah.
intrigued you to be very profound in your respect towards Islam and the lady specifically, the Lady of Heaven?
You're very inspired by what's written about her. All the companions, the Sahaba of Prophet Muhammad, how could they even dare to anger Fatima?
Yoel,
Yeah.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Welcome, Yoel.
Can
You
you hear
are on the
me?
show. We hear you clearly.
Okay, Baruch Hashem, Alhamdulillah.
Ground is yours. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I want to congratulate you on the film, The Lady of Heaven. I haven't seen it yet, but inshallah, I will get to see it in Australia very soon. Um, I just have to find a cinema. Um, also, okay, so I've been studying Islam for quite a few years, um, and it's been a very interesting experience to say the least. Um, I went to a Jewish school, and um, I didn't really. I mean, in Australia, where I am, so I didn't have. Well, it's actually a very multicultural country, where Australia, and there's a lot of different people of different backgrounds, faiths, and religions. Um, but in general, um, I didn't have too much interaction with Muslims, Christians, and people of other backgrounds. Then one day, I decided, I want to study different faiths and to understand if my faith is the true religion. And I'm still studying. I'm not arrogant or proud to say that I have all the truth and I know everything. If I was, I would be like a prophet, which I'm not. Um, but one day, I went to a mosque, which was in Auburn, Sydney. It was called the al-Bayt Center. And I went there and I met the Muslims, and we spoke about our religions. And I listened to different lectures. Sometimes it was only in Arabic, and they had to translate. And that was a very interesting experience. Um, and then soon after that, so I was about 19 years old, and I went to Israel. So I went there to study in yeshiva, which is, I think in Islam you have a thing called a madrasa, which is
Yes.
like an academy or a place where you study.
Yes.
And so I went there and I studied for 6 months, and I went all over Israel. I went to, Sfat was where I was learning, or Safed in Arabic. I went to Beersheba or Beersheba, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, or Al-Quds, Hebron or Hebron. And actually, Hebron was a very, um, how do I put it? It was a very tense experience. You saw the Muslims praying 5 times a day, and in Israel, they had the speakers on. You see Allahu Akbar, the whole thing on loudspeaker, and it was as a Jew at the time. It's not that you consider Muslims as your enemy, but when you when you anyone who visits Israel, you feel the tension between the two faiths, Islam and Judaism. And it's not that, I mean, unless you're a Zionist and and you're anti-Palestinian and you're anti, um, Islam in general, but for most religious Jews like myself, we have nothing against Islam. We have nothing. Um, we have no animosity towards Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam, or anything to do with Islam in general. If there is any animosity within the Jewish people, it's because of the politics, with the Western media, or in Israel you have Islam is always portrayed as a terrorist religion, you know. So,
Mm.
you know, if you talk about Iran or Iraq or Saudi Arabia, any of those countries, you know, everyone thinks, you know, a Muslim, if you go too close to them, they'll blow themselves up, or they'll shoot you or something, they'll stab you. So there's a lot of misconceptions about Muslims. And, you know, when I studied the Hadiths and I studied, you know, the Quran, so the Quran um, is a very common sense religion, and a lot of people find it hard to believe, you know. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, you know, in the world, but you know, Islam treats the people of the book, the people of the kitab, the scriptures, as not as friends necessarily, but they respect them because they were part of the three major religions. And if you talk to any Muslim or Jew about the golden age of Spain, you know, even the most Zionist Jew, you know, or the most Zionist person would say, you know, that was a great time. The Jews and the Muslims flourished, and this was great. Um, you know, and our religions are so similar. You know, it's amazing how similar Islam and Judaism is.
You know, you're mentioning
And
very good points actually. It is very precise what you mentioned from a historical standpoint. Muslims and Jews lived simultaneously together in a very peaceful manner. And actually, the film covers this matter, actually. The film, you would know that when the Messenger of God, blessings be upon him and his family, enters into Medina after the migration, he comes with his entourage. And he, after the arrival of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the Lady of Heaven, and he gives a script to Bilal, the mu'adhin of the Prophet, the known figure.
yeah,
And
yeah, I know the one.
Bilal knows what to do. He goes and he proclaims the speech of the messenger. So he brings forth the writing on the animal skin, and begins to recite this known announcement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he stated that all shall live peacefully, Christians, Jews, and non-Muslims, and they shall live together in righteousness. This is actually a matter that is stipulated in the books of history, and a thing that is very important, and is often unknown actually, is that the Messenger of God, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, actually had two, you can say, very close friends who were Jews. They were very close to the Messenger, and the Messenger used to have dialogue with them often, and they used to be with the Messenger despite being different. And come later, those two Jews, their names are recorded, but now I can't remember them. They, after the demise of the Messenger, blessings be upon him and his family, they came to Islam, they embraced Islam, and they were with Imam Ali alayhi salam in the Battle of Siffin, and they were martyred there. Without a shed of a doubt,
I heard that.
yeah, without a shed of a doubt,
I just
we as Muslims and Jews, Christians, the Quran actually speaks of showing birr to them, birr, which means having a kind friendship with them and treating them very, very kindly. What you can say the issue lies is a matter of politics. When we look at history, for a long time span, we don't see these problems. We really don't see them from a historical standpoint. But in this age, after 48, right? Yeah, 48. The issues with the Sykes-Picot agreement and Israel becoming a state and occupying the Palestinian lands, this is where the spike really emerged. This is where there was a split. When we go back, we don't see the split. We see Jews and Muslims living simultaneously in peace.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's very unfortunate that, not so much in history, but it's very unfortunate that in the Arab Muslim world, you know, there's a conception that, you know, if the Jews are with the Shia, they're the enemies of the Sunnis, and if the Jews are the friends of the Sunnis, then they must be the enemies of the Shia. And it's true that sometimes, you know, Israel will play two sides of the fence. You know, they might, you know, if it's politically to their advantage, they will side with the Sunnis, and if it's politically advantageous with the Shia, then with the Shia. But I myself don't agree with the policy of of Zionism. I do believe that Jews should be allowed to live in the land, but I don't believe in stealing the Palestinian land. I don't believe that we should force ourselves to live there. And actually, if you look, actually, the Quran even says that because we sinned, because we didn't listen to God and the prophets, so He exiled us from the land. And you know, and we're waiting for the Jewish Messiah. You call him Al-Masih,
Mm.
Al-Masih, I think, and we call him Mashiach.
Mashiach, yes, I know.
And yeah, so we're waiting for the Mashiach to
Yeah.
come and bring world peace, or even the Mahdi, the same type of thing, you know. Um, and but the thing is, there's also a thing in the Jewish world, and also even in the non-Jewish world, where you have this stigma between Jews and non-Jews, you know, and it's not that Jews have anything against non-Jews. That's totally incorrect, you know. But there are lots of laws that separate the Jews from the non-Jews, and the reason for that is because, you know, we have to be holy. We have to, you know, separate ourselves from the idol worshippers, the pagans, you know, and we try to live very separate lives to not assimilate, not to intermarry. And so I'll just give you a couple of examples. I don't know what it is to our discussion, but I'll just bring it up. Um, there's a law in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, that, you know, we can't share bread with a non-Jew. You know, and the reason is
Yes,
because
yeah, oh yeah.
if you eat in the home of a non-Jew, even if it's 100%, the fear was that maybe you'll become friends with them, you'll marry them, or your children will marry them, and then the Jewish people will die out. So the rabbis made lots of different decrees that, you know, Jews have to wear different clothes. We have to separate ourselves to a certain extent so that we don't you know, become too what's the word, too influenced, you know. And I think Islam has something similar. You know, you can't, I think in the Quran it says not to take the Jews and the Christians as allies. And I know it doesn't mean that you can't be friends with a Jew or a Christian, but I think it means, and you can explain it to me if I'm wrong, but I think it means that you shouldn't become too close to them, because if you become too close, then they might lead you away from Islam, or they might lead you away to maybe oppress the Muslims or something like that. And just quickly, I'll just tell you about my experience in Israel. So I came back from Hebron after the whole thing, you know, visiting there. And actually, it's interesting that in Hebron, 90% of it is Palestinian, 90% is owned by the Muslims, and 10% of it belongs to well, I say belongs to the Jews, but the Zionists, you know, that live there. And one week they share the street, and the other street, other week, the Muslims have complete control over everything. And I was coming back from there, and I was sitting at a bus stop, and a guy sits next to me at the bus stop, and I thought he was Jewish, you know. And I said, I don't like these Palestinians. I don't like these Muslims, you know. And I was just ranting and ranting and ranting. And then the guy just listened for like, I think 5 minutes, you know. And he said, by the way, I'm a Palestinian. And I was just completely silenced. You know, I didn't say anything. And he told me, he said, you know, he says, there's no reason for us to be enemies. There's no reason for us to dislike each other. He said, this is just politics. And and you know, in the world, you see, even in the Muslim world, you know, you see many regimes, many countries that oppress Muslims, and and no one wants to stand up against oppression. No one wants to stand up against what's wrong, what's sinful. And I think I went onto Wikipedia and I looked at Sheikh Yasir al-Habib's story.
Mm-hmm.
He I think it said he came from Kuwait, and this miracle happened. He went to jail, and he wasn't supposed to be released, and then um, he gets this letter that he can be released, but it turns out to be a mistake. And
Correct.
he quickly flees the country, and he comes to Britain,
Mm.
and then he starts this whole um, Islamic revolution. And I'm really impressed and inspired by Sheikh Yasir al-Habib. And so, but to talk about Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, so I started studying Sunni Islam first because 90% of the Muslims are Sunni. And this, every time I walked into a mosque or a masjid, I would say, what are the differences between Sunni and Shia? And I say, brother, don't make sects. We're just Muslim. Don't talk about Shias, and that's a cult. That's something that is political. It's got nothing to do with Islam. And I listened and I studied, Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, um, and I studied the Quran from just a general basic Sunni perspective. And then I started going further and deeper into the matter. I saw that there are 5 different schools of thought, Hanafi, Hanbali, Jafari, and so on, And so I thought to myself, I want to know the other side of the story. I don't want to just know the Sunni side of the story. I want to know the Shia story. So I started researching, and I had a friend, I think in year 12. His name was Mikhail, and his story is very interesting. His father was not Jewish, but he was of a um, like a Armenian background, Russian Orthodox Christian, and his mother was Jewish, but she converted to Shia Islam, and she would go to Iran quite often. Um, and we were talking about Islam and um, and about this stuff, and um, we started talking about the event of Ghadir Qum. We started talking about you know the different historical things that happened. And what's really interesting is if you look at the time when Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam passed away. So Fatima alayhi salam, she passed away according to a number of hadiths, I think 6 or 8 months after Prophet Muhammad died, and at the age of 18, and people can say, well, it must have been an accident or it just must have happened by coincidence. But you look at all the events that led up to that. You look at the land of Fadak, I think it was the land dispute where
Correct. Yeah.
the inheritance was supposed to go to the Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, and I think not 100% sure about this, and you can correct me, but I think there was a dispute between whether the inheritance should go to the family or whether the inheritance shouldn't go to the family. It should go to the caliph or the Jama'ah, the community. And you look at Islamic law. Islamic law clearly states, and I think even the Quran says somewhere, it says that Allah
That
commands you
Solomon
to,
inherited David. That there is
yeah, that,
inheritance,
yeah,
because they come forth to say that all prophets do not inherit, and what they leave, everything is charity. They came up with this forged narration in order to have all the wealth possible and to basically cut the wings of the revolution. As a short background to the
Yeah.
story, it's perhaps is beneficial to mention it now, considering that it's related also to the Lady of Heaven film. And you will see, of course, the background and the portrayal of events in the film. Um, the land of Fadak was a land that had a reasonable amount of wealth that comes from it. There were people who lived there, and it wasn't like a small garden or a small piece of land. Rather, it was a city. It was a city that people used to live in, and there was business going on. There was shops, there were houses, as a normal city that would be. And there used to be obviously revenues or wealth coming from the land. And Abu Bakr, being the shrewd politician that he is, now we do mention that Abu Bakr is an evil individual. Abu Bakr is, was ignorant in matters of religion. In the books, as it is narrated, even in their sources, that he did not know certain meanings of the Quran. And of course, the Caliph must be, as successor, must be very well acquainted with the book of the Messenger in order to be his Caliph, in order to be his successor, his representative. He must be very acquainted. That was not in Abu Bakr. However, that is not to say that he wasn't very shrewd, and he wasn't very, malicious in his political mind, let's call it. So he recognized very
Yeah.
well that if I was to let this land be for Fatima and Ali, they would have one of two things that they need in order to uprise and make my baby government, newly found government, broken and taken, teared apart, basically. One of the two things were wealth, right? They need wealth, and they need men in order to have, remove the usurper from his power. So he realized that with wealth, if I was to cut the wealth, the men won't be interested. Merely for a few selected individuals that do believe in the story, that do believe in the right of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and are profound supporters of him. The others, I can just, pay them with wealth, and they would go. They're not very interested in having a battle, etc., especially with all these turbulent events that occurred after the demise of the Messenger. People started to leave Islam. Muhammad is dead, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, therefore there is no more the religion of Islam. It happened in the books, it is narrated, recorded. So it was very easy for Abu Bakr to kind of control a certain companions with money. He paid them off. He paid them off, as we will know in the film, that will be depicted. Other companions, they were strong and powerful. However, he knew that they were a selected number of companions that one way or another, if we cut the hands or remove the overwhelming support, the scream of Ali as he is the legitimate caliph with money, they would kind of won't be able to do anything without the permission of the leader. So he, Abu Bakr, was very smart in that action, very wicked in that action, where he usurped the land of Fadak, knowing of the wealth that will come from it. And he stated that I heard from the messenger a narration which states that they do not inherit. He stated, I heard the messenger of Allah say, we prophets do not inherit or leave inheritance. We prophets do not leave inheritance, and whatever we have in this life is given charity after our demise. And when it came to the confrontation of Fadak, when Fatima alayhi salam confronted Abu Bakr in that regard, she said, from where did you bring this? I am the daughter of Prophet, I'm the daughter of the man who you are quoting. And he did not say this. And then she states this infamous, or rather illustrious word, لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا فَرِيًّا. You have come with a great lie. You have come with a great lie. She exposed him right when he was sitting on the pulpit. So he had to resort to people trying to affirm that people did actually hear it. And who did he resort to? Umar, Aisha, his close guard, his close people who would stand up with his rule. Otherwise, none actually had heard this hadith, and rather this hadith goes against the very Quran itself. Because the
mm,
Quran clearly states that Solomon inherited David from David. And if prophets do not inherit, as they said in the hadith, then how does it make sense that the Quran goes against what this narration state? And this is why we have this principle in Shia Islam that other sects do not have. Stated to us by our Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the sixth Imam, that whatever hadith you hear, whatever narration that you hear, put it on the Quran. If it fits well, if it's compatible with the Quran, then we accept it. And if it goes against the Quran, then we throw it against the wall. We don't accept it.
mm.
This is a short background, a brief background of the story.
Yeah. Also, I would encourage other people to watch the Imam Ali movie that was made a few years ago, I think it was. And it's interesting that the Quran says, I'm just paraphrasing, it says that it is not up to the believer to decide a matter, only the Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
Yes, correct.
concerning the person that is appointed. And it's interesting that, you know, Ghadir Khumm happened just at the end of Prophet Muhammad's life. And he raises up his hand and he says, whoever you are wali over the, sorry, he said,
Mawla, Mawla,
you know, yeah,
Mawla.
whoever considers me wali, I'm wali of the believers. And then you know there's many hadith that say, you know, on the Prophet's death on his deathbed, just before he passed away, the companions said, oh, the Prophet's delusional, he doesn't know what he's talking about,
When he
you know.
asked
And
for
then
to write his will, his final will. This
yes,
is the incident that you're referring to.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then after that, after he passed away, so what happened was the 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 caliphs came together and they conspired against Ali, alayhi salam, and they they appointed their own leader. They appointed their own caliph over Imam Ali.
Mm.
And Imam Ali, he was the most qualified, divinely appointed, you know. And I think there's also in the hadith, there's a hadith called Hadith al-Takalain.
Yes.
And Hadith al-Takalain is the the hadith which many Sunnis base many other fabricated hadith in their collection, you know. And there's a I don't know what you think of Imam Naqshbandi, but he made many lectures about how Ahlul Bayt was taken out of the text. Instead of saying choose the Quran and Ahlul Bayt, it was changed to choose the Quran and Sunnah. And anyway, so Imam Ali's leadership was stolen from him. He was supposed to lead the Ummah. The Ummah would have been all Shia, and you know they say that there was no Shia and Sunni before that, and Shiat Ali, the party of Ali, um, it only came later, but it means whoever wasn't part of those sects and the Khawarij and all the others
Mm.
who dissociated from Ali. So if if we apply the term Shia or follower, so really everyone who was on the right path of guidance was a Shia.
You know,
And it was
we should
only
have one day
later
we should
that,
have one day a show where we speak about these matters. These are very good and interesting matters about, you know, where you are in your research, and
yeah,
where it's very, you know, intriguing to see your journey and where you are and what makes you so interested in that regard. But that should be left for a different time. I want to ask you a question here. What
yeah.
intrigued you to be very profound in your respect towards Islam and the lady specifically, the Lady of Heaven?
Um, okay, so I'll start with your first question about Islam.
Mm.
Um, so for me, it was it was the fact that Islam isn't a terrorist religion. It's not a religion that's like ISIS or Daesh. And that was actually, I saw the trailer, where they put the guns up in the air and everyone's running away and they're shooting them. But Islam is I changed towards Islam when I saw the hospitality of Muslims. Well, because they treat people properly. That Islam is a religion that has follows civilization, and it's Judaism and Islam is very similar. And when I saw those similarities, you know, I I sort of lost my animosity, I guess, towards Islam. And it's not that I ever was really had animosity towards Islam. I don't have any animosity towards Christianity or any other religion. But you hear certain perceptions within the media, you hear certain perceptions that other people have. And a lot of people, they skim read the Quran, they skim read the Hadiths, and a person has to understand that there isn't just one sect of Islam, there isn't just, one interpretation. There are many different schools of thought. But of course, only one of them can be really on the path of guidance. Um, and the Shiites, the Shia are very different to the other schools of thought in the sense that the the Imams of al-Bayt and even today within the Shia world, you find, and I'm not saying Iran is a good or bad example. I know how the Rafida sort of feel about Iran. There's a bit of tension. But I'll just say that out of all the countries in the Middle East, Iran is probably the only country that has Jews there. And I've had many Shiite friends. I've met many Ayatollahs, Shiite imams, and they've always been very kind to me. Always been very kind to Jews that I know of. But of course, Muslims have to fight against injustice, oppression, and what's beautiful is that a Muslim in Iran or Iraq or anywhere in the world, feels pain when he sees another Muslim hurting, suffering. It's not just, this is my country, this is my family, my lineage, and I don't care what happens somewhere else. Another Muslim feels, empathy. He feels pain when he sees suffering anywhere in the world. And when the more I learned about Muslims, I thought they're not so different from me. They're not so different from anyone else. And I realized that we can have interfaith dialogue. They can come to our synagogues. We can come to their mosques, and we don't have to be afraid. I'll just tell you a quick story. So in the yeshiva, where I am, so a number of years ago, we had a Muslim who came, and I don't know the full story, but he started praying in the yeshiva, and there's a lot of ignorance among a number of Jews, and I think someone got terrified. He thought, "What's a Muslim doing here? What's a Muslim praying here?" So they called the police, because they were because there's this irrational fear among a lot of Jews, Iranian Islamophobia. Anyway, but after studying, Islam, and especially being able to come on your show, and uh, and of course having dialogue over the years with Muslims, my entire perception about Islam has changed, and I only have respect for Muslims, and anyone can do something in the name of Islam. Anyone can kill someone. Anyone can steal. It happens in the Jewish religion also. You have people who claim to be the representatives of all Jews, and someone looks at that person and he thinks all Jews are that way, all Jews are the same, and it's not true. There's a famous expression, it's called two Jews, three opinions. And I've met Jews from all walks of life with completely different ideas. There's not, I don't think there's even one Jew that's the same.
Of course,
If you
without
counted
a doubt,
all of
yes.
Yeah,
We
if you
understand.
look
And
at
the
all the
film, I would say the film will clear a lot. So you had to go through, you know, the sources. You had to go through reading and researching
yeah.
Islam
So
after having your
yes,
friend's you know, story and relation with you. Um, but
exactly.
the film will kind of conclude it all within 2 hours 21 minutes in a beautiful, phenomenal masterpiece of a film, where one would be
I'm
able
looking
to
for.
immediately distinguish between the right path of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what he laid out as a religion, and from the path that was deviated and then uh, which we see very startling in our modern day, where we see Muslims carrying out, so-called quote-unquote Muslims, of course, carrying out certain activities of
Yeah.
violence and etc. I would like you to shift more on the lady right now. I would like to shift more on the lady. How
Okay.
is your connection with the lady? What makes you so profound in the support to this film?
Um. Well, first of all, I think the film is accurate according to the history, or as accurate as can be. I haven't seen the actual film yet, so it would be dishonest if I said that I knew exactly what was in the film. But I trust that everything that was put into the film was carefully researched,
Mm.
um, based on the best hadiths and the sources. So you know, I'll be interested to see that, and then to do more research into the film. But as for the Lady of Heaven, or Fatima al-Zahra, so Fatima, she is such a beautiful person. You know, she's someone who is humble, someone who is kind, someone who, she's in Hebrew we call it tzedekis, or real righteous woman. And everything that she did, you have to, even if you never met her, you feel this. Uh, she must have been a very righteous person. She must have been a very holy person, and you're inspired when you will watch the film, I'm sure. But you're very inspired by what's written about her, and it's very sad and tragic, the history, to see that she was the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, and a lot of people made this point. I mean, how could anyone treat her this way? And all the companions, the Sahaba of Prophet Muhammad, how could they even dare to anger Fatima? A lot of people have quoted the hadith: "Whoever angers Fatima angers me, or the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam." And you think to yourself, the Sahaba are righteous and they're good people, and there was never any sectarian differences even during that time. How is it that you have the Battle of the Camel, or many of these wars that happened between the Sunni and the Shia, and you read the what is it called, Naj al Balaga,
Balagha,
I
Nahjul Balagha, yes, correct.
right, that's right.
Precisely.
So you read that and you see how I there's a it's written in there that Imam Ali was tied on his back or on his stomach, and he was pulled by the horses, as it was riding, and he was being cut and bruised by the earth, that was pulling him. Um, and also, he didn't want to give bayah, he didn't want to give allegiance originally, and he had to do taqiyya. He had to, for the sake of Islam, to save Islam, he had to um, more or less play it smart with the Muslims, because the Sahaba, because um, they weren't interested in ever really electing him as the Hadith, as the Imam, of the Muslims, and they had completely different beliefs about how the caliph should rule the Muslims. We see that the tyrants and the corrupt leaders, and he lived separately, with Fatima, and he had children, and he had different followers even, in the Middle East. And you think to yourself, why would he do that? Why would he separate from the Muslims? Why would he separate from the Khilafah and have all these other wars? And then tragically, he was murdered, and killed in Kufa, oh sorry, Karbala. and
Kufa,
you
Kufa,
see
you're right. Kufa.
oh, that's right,
Yeah.
okay. You see Sunni discourse, the channel that tries to make out all these different scenarios, about how it must have, how everyone was just confused, and they try to downplay it like like they didn't know who Imam Ali was, and they didn't know. I think they come up with these conspiracies, Ibn Saba, and all the rest of it.
You know, the film will
And
will kind of bring that to light what you mentioned, and of course some of what you mentioned is a bit it's it's a little it varies with the actual sources, but of course I can understand that you're coming from a you're reading the sources and you're trying to understand, although it's it's a completely different corpus, completely different literature than what you have, but the film will depict some of what you quoted actually. Um, but the Imam alayhi salam actually did not accept to pay allegiance. That's something that is denoted.
okay,
Yeah, it's well actually well stipulated that the Imam actually did not refuse to pay allegiance, and rather did not practice taqiyya at all. He profoundly isolated himself in his house for 25 years, and hence why you see that there isn't any um, you know there's always a clash between the household of the Prophet and the government, and that's actually quoted by a known figure by the non-Shias from the Bakri side, the so-called Sunnis. They have a scholar called Ibn Khaldun, and he writes in his book, his history book, and it's very revered. It's a very heavyweight, history book. He writes that Ahlul Bayt, the household of the Prophet, have shifted from the government and had a methodology of their own. And this is exactly what you mentioned. Yes, we have our own, belief system. We have our own creed, narrated to us by the very grandsons of the Messenger. And that's what differentiates us. We have, for example, in the exegesis of the Quran, we take it from the grandsons. They take it from fallible scholars, and that have not even seen the Prophet. They take the exegesis of the Quran from the likes of, Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, for example, or
yeah,
Mujalid, or these figures, and they did not actually meet the Prophet. And who is to tell us of the religion better than the very grandsons of the Messenger? That is where we are coming from.
hopefully.
I wish you a very prosperous journey in your research, and I would urge you to continue reading and researching, and perhaps there will be another time where we can guest you once again and learn from each other and carry on this healthy dialogue. And I pray that one day you will join the Tava and you will be embraced by the Rakhamim of the Almighty. And I wish
Amen.
that you have a prosperous future, inshallah. Thank you very much, brother. You're well.
Amen. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much.
No worries.
All
Thank
right,
you very
Assalamu
much.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum. Thank you.